Okay, Claire, it's been one very, very difficult week in Haringey, particularly up in Tottenham, but also in other areas of the borough. I wonder if you could just tell me how you're feeling about it all.
I think the events of the last week have come as a great shock to me personally, but having spoken to many residents in the borough from all across the borough, I think they've been a great shock to us all. Certainly when I walked down Tottenham High Road on Sunday morning with David Lammy, Joanne McCartney and Sharon Grant, Bernie's widow, surveying the damage that had been done was nothing short of devastating. And the thoughts that were going through my mind really was just really thinking about the hundreds of people in the community over the last 20 years or more who have made a contribution to regenerating Tottenham, to making a positive contribution to the place, and how some of that work, and particularly some of the physical aspects of that regeneration, had been pulled apart in an evening of violence. And that was perhaps the most depressing, despondent I felt.
And where do you think it's come from, Claire? Why Haringey? Why Tottenham?
I think if we want to look at drivers, then we know that in Tottenham specifically, that we had an incident on Thursday evening, the shooting of Mark Duggan, that there was a great deal of community feeling arising from that shooting, and obviously that's subject to an ongoing investigation by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And there was clearly that vigil on Saturday afternoon outside Tottenham Police Station, and I think it's very important to say that Mr Duggan's family were very clear at that time that they did not want to see any violence perpetrated in the name of the family or in memory of Mr Duggan, that they wanted to see a peaceful vigil. And that is what we saw for a few hours, and clearly events then sadly spiralled out of control, and it was that led to the scenes of violence, the awful scenes of violence that we saw in Tottenham through Saturday night and into Sunday morning, which then clearly spread to Wood Green and other areas. I think it would be a mistake to label the violence that we saw in Tottenham in the same way as people are labelling the violence that we've seen in the rest of London and indeed the rest of the country in recent days. There was a driver, there was a catalytic event in Tottenham on Saturday, and we need to bear that in mind.
There was a catalytic event, but was there anything underlying it, anything about the nature of the borough? For example, there's quite a lot of unemployment in that part of the borough, isn't there?
There is. My response to that is that if we look at the history of unrest, of disturbance in this country over the last generation, the lesson of that is that when politicians and commentators leap to knee-jerk conclusions about what's happened, what the driver was, and therefore what needs to be done about it, we often jump to the wrong conclusions. In a time like this, I think we need a period of reflection. We need to engage in a conversation with our communities, and we really do need to understand what happened. You pick up on the point of unemployment, and indeed we know that unemployment in Tottenham is very high at present, highest in London, highest unemployment rate in London. Youth unemployment's very high. However, Tottenham has had high unemployment in the past. We've had 25 years of peace in Tottenham. I think that's why we can't jump to conclusions at this stage, and instead really do need to gather the evidence, genuinely understand what happened before we start thinking about how we move forward in terms of longer term solutions.
And of course there's the spectre of the cuts, and I imagine as you start looking at the future you'll be looking at the cuts, how they might have played a role, and what, if anything, needs to change in the future.
Where I think we shouldn't play the cuts into this is to say we saw violence and that they were a result of cuts. I think that that's crass, and I think that that potentially provides an excuse for what is inexcusable. Gratuitous violence, the looting of shops, the destruction of individuals, often independent shopkeepers, businesses, cannot be excused or attributed to spending cuts. So I think that's very important to say up front. I think where the cuts will play into this is that the council doesn't have the only role in tackling the issues that emerge from the sad events of the last week, but we do have a key role to play, and I think the role that we play will be made much tougher by the fact that we are in an era of limited resources, and therefore what we can do by way of money is far more constrained than it has been in the past.
So a period of reflection before acting, but in the immediate period ahead now, I know that a lot of local people are very keen to help, and they have been helping both up at the Tottenham Community Assessment Centre, and in fact from around the country you've been getting donations coming in. Social media's played a great role in that through Twitter and dare I say it, through Harringay Online. But it's just a word from you, Claire, about what's the best way that people can help now, and have you been able to get a handle on what the borough is doing to orchestrate that voluntary help?
So the Community Assistance Centre, as you say, at Tottenham Green Leisure Centre is really the focal point for that help at this moment in time, and it was set up, I think we were up and running by Tuesday. I went to visit on Wednesday and was absolutely overwhelmed by the range of services that had come into that centre, which meant that we were able to provide financial advice, housing advice. The voluntary sector were playing a part through organisations like Citizens Advice, Caris, Victim Support, and the local community was playing a role. People were donating clothes and toys and toiletries and food, and local businesses were playing a role almost. And coming out of what we've seen, it's incredibly heartening, having spent a lot of the last week talking to media organisations and saying one of the things that I love most about Haringey is the kindness that people show towards each other and the humanity of our community, and really seeing that expressed in the Assistance Centre has been fantastic. If people do want to help, then the Assistance Centre remains open and will do for as long as it's required. People can go along, put their name down to volunteer. They're still taking donations there, both in terms of goods, but also, as you say, in terms of money. What we've set up is a fund for individuals and local businesses that have been affected. The council is administering that fund, although it remains completely independent and separate from council finances, quite clearly. But I'm really struck, having spoken to lots of people and those most directly affected in recent days, how difficult things will be for individuals and for business owners, particularly small independent businesses, in the months and years to come. Families who literally escaped with their lives and the clothes they were standing up in. Small shopkeepers, many of whom have spent a decade or more trying to build up a business, and they've lost everything. They were only partially insured in some cases, and in others their cash flow situations are such that they're going to find it very difficult to reopen. So really encourage, if people are in a position either to raise funds or if they're lucky enough to be able to donate themselves, then that would certainly be encouraged. I think there's a wider implication of your question, though, which is the community as a whole, I think, wants to come out and do something. I think that people here want to show that the Tottenham that was beamed around the world, the ugly scenes of Tottenham on Saturday evening, are not representative of this place. They're not representative of the borough. And we need to ensure that working together, we do in some way, at an appropriate time, show our pride in the borough and the positive side of being a Haringey resident.
It sounds like there's some thoughts in the pipeline there and news to come, Claire.
I think there are a lot of thoughts at this moment in time. Clearly, loads of people with ideas, and really welcome those. We're still only a few days on, and in a sense, the reality here at the council is that we're still in the sort of just coming out of the crisis mode. Really, you know, we've today resurfacing bits of Tottenham High Road where the tarmac was completely burnt. We've still got the High Road to reopen in Wood Green. I've just come through. There are still shops boarded up. So we've got a lot to do, but I think in in concentrating on the immediate, we shouldn't, and the physical fabric and rebuilding that, we shouldn't forget that we have a job of work to do in terms of expressing our social solidarity in many respects.
You said that you're very willing to support people who want to raise funds and donate. There's one particular initiative I know of being set up by the Tottenham Choir, and they're keen to set up a Tottenham benefit gig using the Burnley Grant Centre. Is that something you'd support, Claire?
Sounds fantastic. Tottenham Community Choir contributes masses to the local community, and the choir is hugely representative of the diversity of the borough and of Tottenham, the place. So I think anything like that would be really welcome. And as I say, having met many of those most severely impacted by the events of the weekend, there really is a need out there, and the danger is that as the media, the world's media, turn away from Tottenham, that we as a community and the needs that exist get forgotten. Now, it's my job to ensure that at government level that Tottenham stays firmly on the map and that we do get the assistance we need in financial and other ways to rebuild. But I think the community has a massive role to play in really raising the spirits of us all and reminding us all why we choose to live in this borough.
So it sounds like it's a collaboration between the community and the council. What's the one thing that the community can do to help right now?
Right now, I still think that the need is at the assistance centre, so if people want to volunteer, then please do get involved. And other than that, I think it's really about having conversations with people, challenging the perceptions of Tottenham that have been put out there. Because when I go around the borough and speak to people really do have very many positive reasons for living here, and we can all play our part in terms of reminding people what a great place Tottenham is, and that some of the scenes of the last week are just not representative of 99% of us.
And what's the key thing from the council side that you think the council can really focus on right now to help rebuild?
I think moving forwards that we've got a job of work to do in terms of the physical regeneration, but also working with local people to ensure that Tottenham is seen in positive terms once again, both in London but across the country and, dare I say it, around the world.
Okay, well, I think we're all going to be watching this space with great interest, and wish you and your colleagues all the best as you help to rebuild the borough.
Thanks, you.